All
Hey,
right.
thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to pass it over to Ron Chin, Chair of the Canadian Outrigger Racing Association. Ron, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Welcome, everybody. As Eric mentioned, this is the first town hall of 2024. We're very pleased to welcome Dr. Gordon Giesbrecht, retired professor from the University of Manitoba. He was a professor of thermophysiology in the Department of Kinesiology and Recreation Management. And he's an expert on cold water safety. And he's acquired the moniker of Dr. Popsicle, I think from various television appearances. Before handing it over to Dr. Giesbrecht, I'll first provide a reminder of our policies regarding the Town Hall series. We'd ask everybody to mute their microphones to eliminate any background noise. And please submit your questions that you might have to Dr. Giesbrecht via the chat. Eric Ages and I will moderate and feed those questions to Dr. Giesbrecht when he has a chance during his presentation. Also note that the session is being recorded and we'll be posting it to the CORA website. And any contributions that you may make may also be recorded and posted to the CORA website, and you won't receive any compensation for any contributions that you make. And by remaining on the call and or making contributions, you consent to any posting on the CORA website. Okay, and just handing it over to Dr. Giesbrecht now. Welcome, Dr. Giesbrecht, and you can get started. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks for that kind introduction, and thank you for the introduction. It's always great to talk to folks who are going out into the wilderness and harsh environments and interested in learning about if there's anything they can pick up a little extra to help them out surviving and keeping safe. So you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, there's my sound check, and you can see the presentation. So we got the visual check and everything's good. Okay, so whenever I talk about anything to do with outdoors or whatever, I always start by introducing 3 Ps. Probably several of us have different kinds of reminders of or whatever, but my 3 Ps are prepare, prevent, and perform. So you need to prepare for the reasonable worst case scenario. And part of that is what you're doing right now, listening to an hour or so of information about cold. Of course, prevent is the best thing. If you can prevent any incidents, then you don't have to worry about all the rest of it. And as we will talk a little bit later on, it's really important that if you do have an incident, that you're able to perform. And performing requires 2 things. One is you've got to remember what you're supposed to do, and then you've got to do it. And both of those don't necessarily happen all the time. So I'm going to give you a lot of info, and I'll tell you most of it, pretty much all of it, has got some scientific background and support, as well as practical support. But the principles of this presentation, if I give you any advice, it'll work for most of the people in most of the scenarios most of the time. There's always the bad day when it doesn't really matter what you do, your number was up, but hopefully you won't get in any of those perfect storm scenarios. So I've been talking about, for decades about, accidental cold water immersion. That's normally what I've been talking about and studying. And I became aware of, purposeful cold water immersion. This isn't you folks, but cold water swimming. It's a good thing to learn from. New phenomenon. I call it new. Last 5-10 years, I might have been doing it before. People might have been doing it before that, but it seems that it's really sort of caught on in the last decade, I guess. And it's interesting that we can learn from all of these different types of activities, and you can relate it to your own. And it's interesting, the risks for cold water swimming, we don't have enough data to publish this in a scientific journal yet, but there's anecdotal evidence that the risks are paradoxical in that more experienced swimmers might be a greater risk of incapacitation. and we'll talk about the 3 phases of cold water immersion soon, and just give you a primer on it. The first one is the cold shock response, and then cold incapacitation as your muscles and nerves get cold, and then and only then hypothermia. So the interesting that the people who tend that anecdotally may be getting in more trouble are those who have more experience, because they're getting more acclimatized. They can put up with more pain and suffering and discomfort and cold, so they can swim longer, and they get a false sense of security. But if you swim longer, there's nothing magical. You can't beat physics. So the longer you're in the water, the colder you're going to get. And so those folks who are in longer, more likely to get into trouble. And so the basic principles that we talk about for cold water swimming, and I think we can apply it to you folks as well, is first of all, you need to have a healthy heart and body. Maybe you can have a few more health problems if you're canoeing in the summer, or in warmer water, where some of you are. It's always cold. But if as we're going to see, cold just adds an extra stress to everything else. So you really need to be healthy to do this. Cold water swimming, or any of these activities in cold water, like yours. Gradually increase exposure if you're going into the cold, and safety. Never be alone. So I'm not aware of any solo outrigger canoes. There might be, but anyway, whatever you're out there, you need to have people along, and you have to beware after exit, because your physical condition can deteriorate, even though you're feeling great while you're doing your activity. So, certainly all of you know about University of Victoria. Some of you may know about John Hayward, who was a professor there from the mid 60s to early 90s. He developed along with survival systems, the float coat, the UVic float coat, and so there was a tragedy with the rowing team in Victoria, and it was a 9-member rowing team. So again, we don't have a paper for outrigger canoes, but anyway, and it was 4-degree water. They tipped their skull, and they were immersed for 50 minutes, and then they were finally rescued. And 2 of the rescued died, one from severe hypothermia and the other from drowning, as a consequence of cold incapacitation and hypothermia. Oops. Sorry about that. Let me get back here. Yeah, so we're going to talk about actually 4 phases of cold water immersion. And just so you can see here that you can die in all 4 of those phases. So you just have to listen. What we're going to talk about is how to survive if you do end up in the water. And the core temperature. So just a little review. Your resting normal core temperature for most of us right now is in and around 37 degrees. And the core temperature of these 2 coldest rowers who actually survived was 23 and 25 degrees. So you can possibly survive very low temperatures, but you can also die at a much warmer temperature. So buyer beware. So I'm just going to talk about this cold water incident. I start almost every cold water talk with this incident, because it really shows a lot of things. So first of all, this is in a place called Convict Lake in Northern California. And there were a group of delinquents on sort of a day activity there. And 4 of the youths got away from the group, and they went out onto the ice, and they broke through. And we have the usual cascade, the circus of events that happened after that. One of them managed to get out and went for help. So there's 3 youths still in the ice. In the water. And so 2 counselors rushed out to help them, and they broke through. And there were 2 fire EMS personnel, off-duty personnel, who were there, and they went out and they broke through. And there was a search and rescue person off duty who also went out, and he broke through. They all should have known better, but they went out there. And for our purposes, the point isn't so much about the rescue going out and risking themselves, but it's what happened later on. So finally, a rescue team with an airboat arrived. You can see the airboat back here, and the rescue team. And one of these docks, I believe is this one here, was an ER dock. And so, sorry, one of the rescue team was an ER doc. And so he was able to make some very detailed observations on this one survivor. They rescued there were 8 people in there, and only one adult was still alive when they got there. So 3 youths and 4 adults died, all within 15 minutes. Now, when you read stories about this, inevitably you're going to hear the word hypothermia. The public generally, if you talk about cold water, they've got to talk about hypothermia. Everything is about hypothermia. And I'm going to tell you that that's not your first and foremost issue. And there's a reason why, there are some things that it's important that are not correct, and it doesn't really matter. This is very important to understand because it does matter. And we'll get to that later on as we move through this. So this lone survivor was normothermic. They measured his core temperature. He was exhausted. He was ataxic, which means he had no muscle coordination, and he had severe alkalosis, which means he had low blood CO2, and he was numb. And the low blood CO2 is a symptom or a result of hyperextended hyperventilation, breathing too much, like you do when you panic, or if any of you have fallen in cold water. Certainly for the first 10 to 30 or 40 seconds, after your initial gasping, you are hyperventilating. And if you do that long enough, if you hyperventilate indefinitely, you'll become numb, and then you can actually pass out, which, as you can imagine, if you're in a body of water and you pass out, that's not good for your health. Not good for your survival. So this patient is consistent with panic and persistent hyperventilation. And so, by extension, these 7 deaths were not due to hypothermia, despite what the papers said and what the public would perceive. They were due to the cold shock response and panic, continued hyperventilation, and loss of control and drowning. You should need to think about the fact that there were 8 people in this hole. You can imagine if a few of them are panicking, it'll cause the rest of them to panic. And 7 of them drowned. But I can assure you they all would have been normothermic. They did not die of hypothermia. So to try and just point out or show what happens when you are in cold water, I made up this graph. This isn't real data, but it's a textbook graph where you just take it for an average. So it doesn't matter how cold the water is. Just think really cold. Doesn't matter. This is for adults. And here's core temperature, and you start off, and this is cold water immersion time. So time 0, again, this is 37 degrees C. And if we all went, measured our core temperature and jumped in the harbor right now, and we measured our temperatures, it would go up, even if just a few tenths of a degree, but it would go up for the first 5, 10, or 15 minutes. Because we're vasoconstricting and not losing as much heat from or trying to cut down heat loss from the skin, and shivering and producing heat. But it's a very short-lived increase, because then you start to decrease. And once you get cooling off, it's pretty much a linear rate of cooling. So it takes about half. So we didn't take the time to do this, but I often will ask a group, how long do you think it will take if you fall in ice water with winter clothing on? And there'll be a few people who might say longer periods of time, half an hour, but most people will give answers between 2 minutes to 10 minutes. And in fact, I did this with 680 people over 2 years who listened to my talks, and I gave them this question ahead of time. And 70% of them, almost three quarters, thought it was 10 minutes or less. 50% thought it was 5 minutes or less. And as you can see here, 5 or 10 minutes, that's here, you are nowhere near hypothermic at this time. And so, this is one of the everybody, like I call them everybody knows statements, or lies my mother told me. Everybody knows you catch a cold if you don't wear a toque after you've showered. That's not really correct. And everybody knows you lose most of your heat through your head. Not true. And everybody knows you become hypothermic right away, which is not true. So some things it doesn't really matter, but this is important because if you fall in ice water and you think that you're going to become hypothermic right away, then you're more likely to panic. And panic doesn't ever increase the quality of your decision making. And just think about the 7 people who died in the example I gave you earlier. So the threshold for the medical threshold for mild hypothermia is 35 degrees, and it takes about half an hour. And in those 680 people that I surveyed, and those were all a biased sample, these were people who were experts or training to be experts, or at least interested in the topic. Only 4% of them got it right, 30 seconds or longer, 30 minutes or longer, sorry. Anyway, if you keep cooling, after about an hour, you hit 30 degrees, and we're going to use 30 degrees as a textbook threshold for unconsciousness. And we'll talk about, when we get to the 1-10-1 principle, we will talk about this. And 28 degrees is the threshold, the medical threshold for severe hypothermia. And the reason we've picked that number is that when the heart is at that temperature or colder, there's a real risk of ventricular or fibrillation or cardiac arrest. So most deaths happen due to drowning early on. Very few times do you hear somebody, unless they're holding on to a rowboat, a boat or a kayak or an outrigger or something like that, that they can live longer. But most deaths happen in the first, within half an hour, and that's due to drowning, not hypothermia. And few deaths happen where you actually die of hypothermia. And death from hypothermia itself is when the heart stops. So you have to be alive in that cold water a long time, an hour or 2 or 3, to actually get your heart cold enough to die of hypothermia. And of course, there's only one way you're going to do that, and that's if you have a Ph.D. on. You can survive, even for an hour maybe, but once you become unconscious, of course, you can't hold on to anything. And then you're relying on your Ph.D., which of course is not a guarantee, because if there's waves, that still might go over your face. Anyway, enough of that introduction. So let's debunk some of these cold water myths. Why does the public think you become hypothermic so quick? Things like the Merck Manual of Medical Information here. Sudden immersion in very cold water may cause fatal hypothermia in 5 to 15 minutes. You are not going to die of hypothermia in 5 to 15 minutes. So when I tell you not to panic later on and just get control of your breathing, you can take a minute or 2 to get your breathing under control and make a plan, because you're not going to die of hypothermia. You can believe me and don't believe this. Now, of course, if you panic, or if your head's underwater when you're hyperventilating, well, then you can drown. So there are lots of ways to die early on, but not from hypothermia. So this is this is taken from an old US rowing video. Before I go any further, they asked me to update their information, and they don't say this anymore. But in their video, they showed this gal, and they said, she would be hypothermia within a few minutes. Well, that's not the case. And they also perpetrated another old myth of, they said, I forget the number, but it was either 70 or 90% of your heat is lost through your head. Now, that is true if, let me get my, well, no, it's not true. Sorry. You just look at this person. assume this is 10-degree water, cold, and the air is cold, but not that, not, it's not icy or anything. So she has got 90% of her body is in 10-degree water, and she's got her head above the water. Where do you think most of her heat is being lost? It is not from her head. So there are all kinds of these myths out there, and I spent a good portion of my career trying to correct them. So, by the way, I'm all about wearing a toque. I always have a toque in the cold weather, and I won't wear an outside jacket if it doesn't have a hood on it. So I'm big, but that is more for comfort. I'm not worried about if I lost my toque, I'm going to become hypothermic through my head. So now we're going to start getting, I've got a few demonstration videos to show you here. This is a video we were making up in northern Quebec in Saluit with indigenous folks up there. And this water is either 8 or 10 degrees, I can't remember. And so we just dumped him off here. And I just want you could watch his breathing. This is hyperventilating. He's breathing more than he would if he was in warm water. But he's not dying. He's not hypothermic, I can guarantee you that. And so many people don't wear life jackets because they think if we fall in cold water, we're going to die right away anyway. So why prolong? We're going to die for sure. So why prolong the agony? It's a very defeatist attitude. And unfortunately, it's based on false information. So we purposely told his buddy, his buddy would have been back here easily to pick him up in a very short period of time. But we said, wait 2 minutes. And he said, okay, you can come and pick him up now. So now he's been in the water for two minutes, and you can see he's not hyperventilating anymore. Much more relaxed. Okay, so you can see that after 2 minutes in that 8 or 10 degree water, he is fine. Now, we told, we've instructed them that when you have someone in the water, get them horizontal as quickly as possible. But this guy is in assuming he's young and healthy, he is young, assuming he's healthy, he has no medical problems from the cold exposure here right now. So just quickly, this will help when we're trying to, I always provide this sort of background information that helps things make sense later on. So this is how does your body lose heat? There are 4 mechanisms of heat loss. And there they are on the left: conduction, convection, evaporation, and radiation. And so your core temperature, the body tries to maintain it at 37 degrees. And when we talk about core, by the way, that is your heart, lungs, and brain. That's the minimal mass of your core. Your other central organs may be at the same temperature, or they might be colder depending on the situation. But the warmest organs in your body are always going to be the heart, lungs, and brain. And so what your core temperature is a balance between heat gain, which just heat production. Right now, we're all producing about 100 watts of heat. And then if you're doing any exercise, that's producing heat. Shivering is an involuntary exercise, producing heat. And you can always add external heat. And that heat gain is weighed against heat loss. And we're trying to keep things at an equilibrium. which we all are right now, since I assume that none of us, if we're all inside, none of us are becoming hypothermic or hyperthermic. So we're in heat balance right now. So here is a pictorial definition of these mechanisms. Conduction is through direct contact with a solid or a liquid. You're sitting in the snow, your bum feels cold, that's conduction. Convection, flowing air or water, removes heat. So if you hold a thermometer in your hand and you go outside and it's -10 and you're out of the wind, and you hold the thermometer in your bare hand and you go out, put your hand out into the wind, the thermometer still reads -10, but your hand feels much colder because that moving air is removing heat away from your skin and cooling it off quicker. Radiation is just through space by air or infrared radiation. And evaporation is when you change a liquid to a gas. That phase change requires energy. And we've all had this. You get out and when you're wet, you feel, well, if you if you want to tell which way the wind's coming, you lick your finger and stick it up in the wind. And the cold side is from where the air is coming. Now that's convective heat loss, but that moving air evaporates, causes evaporation, and that's why that part of the skin feels colder. Okay, good. So I want to show you this. These pictures are, John Hayward took these pictures back in the 60s, and these are infrared photographs where white is warm and dark is cold. And this is a nude subject just standing in the lab before any cold immersion. You can see there's some differences, but generally it's pretty even across compared to B. Now here the subject jumped in the water and just rested quietly in the water in 7.5 degree water. Then he came out and they took another picture right away. And as you can see, as you can imagine, most of the skin is very cold, very dark. But there are these areas that are light as they were before he got in the water. And this is a very important picture because this would indicate if you have warm skin in a cold environment, that means you're losing heat from that area. So there's more heat loss here than his navel, for instance. And so this is because there are large vessels close to the skin, in the neck, in the armpits and in the femoral vessels in the groin. So that is where you're losing heat. So it should make sense to you, if you're trying to survive in the cold water. You're out and you're not 10 feet from shore. You're stuck for a while waiting for rescue. You want to decrease your heat loss. So the help position is the heat escape lessening position. And if I say to you that, you've probably all heard of it, but if you explain that, if you push your arms in against your chest, cover the armpits, and squeeze your legs together and sort of decrease that surface area in your groin, that's going to decrease heat loss. So that should make sense. The other thing should make sense is that if you're dealing with a cold patient, these would be places where you want to put heat so that you can direct that heat and transfer it back to the core. Now we're going to tell you, don't worry about the neck. Don't worry about the groin. This is where the heart is. That's the organ that is at risk of stopping because it gets too cold. You want to warm that heart. If you happen to have chemical heating blankets or whatever, just apply it to the chest and the armpits and forget about the neck or the groin. Now, this subject got back in the water, swam another in 7.5 degree water again, and then he did some swimming. And then he came out, and as you can see, his arms, shoulders, and upper chest are white hot here, very warm. And that's because the exercising muscles, the muscles he used to swim, were creating heat. That's being lost. And there's been an increase in blood flow to that area in order to bring oxygen to the muscles so you could do the work. So you can imagine that your receptors, your temperature receptors are in your skin. So if you're swimming, you might feel warmer because you have warmer skin. But as we said before, warmer skin in cold water means you're losing more heat. And we'll talk about that more as we move along. So how do we respond to cold water? There are four, as I mentioned before, there are 4 phases of cold water immersion. And I'm going to name them for you. We're going to describe them, but sometimes it's more difficult to remember specific words or whatever, as opposed to just work. I tell my students, if you just understand the big picture, you can figure it out for yourself. So think about if I end up in cold water and I start the clock from 0 seconds and move on, what is going to get cold first and then what and then what? So your skin's going to get cold, obviously, right away. If I stay in for, minutes or longer, that cooling is going to go subsurface and I'm going to start cooling my muscles and nerves. And if I wait in there, if I'm in the water long enough, eventually my core will get cold. So these 3 statements relate, or these facts relate to the both what we call the phase and what happens during the phase. So when your skin gets cold, that stimulates the cold shock response. And it will last for, it says 1 to 2 minutes here, could be less than a minute, could be 30 or 40 seconds, unless you panic. So the cold shock response is a gasp followed by hyperventilation and an increase in cardiac work. So the reality is this physiologic reflex or response will stop. As you saw, our guy up in Saluit, he was hyperventilating for the 40 seconds of the first video, but by 2 minutes, when the boat finally came to pick him up, he was breathing normally. So you can force yourself to get your breathing normal earlier, or if you panic, you can extend that hyperventilation period longer. And it's much more difficult. If you can't control your breathing, you can't control your swimming movements, and you can drown as you're flailing away, in a very short period of time. Excuse me. As your muscles and nerves get cold, we have what's called cold incapacitation. And that's, nerves and muscle fibers don't work as well as they get colder until eventually, if you get cold enough, they'll actually cease activity altogether. So that's why you've all experienced weakness and incoordination probably. And in this case, I've got 2 to 20 minutes here. It doesn't get better. It starts after about 2 minutes and it just continually gets worse, up to say 20 minutes, and then you're almost incapacitated. And of course, if you don't have a Ph.D. on, this is another way that you drown. Now, I should mention that the numbers that we're giving you here are variable between individuals and obviously depending on the temperature, right? If you're in 4-degree water, you're going to become incapacitated much quicker than if you're in 15-degree water. And so these are just, again, textbook numbers. The bottom line is the cold shock response happens immediately, and it's a short lasting response. You have several minutes where you can actually do something, so you don't have to worry about, I've got to get out of here in 10 seconds, because that's corresponding with the time when you're breathing uncontrollably. And it might, obviously it's going to take longer to become hypothermic and warmer in less cold water. So the point is that is a long ways away from when you fall in the water. So when I tell you don't panic, you're not going to become a hypothermic right away. You can believe me, hopefully. Well, you've got to believe me because it's the truth. All right, so we said there are 4 phases of cold water immersion. So these first 3 we've just talked about. So I've given you names now, and then I'm going to talk about the 1-10-1 principle in a few moments. And if you could just try to do your best to use exactly the same terms as you try to remember it yourself and as you relate it to others, that's the kind of thing that allows something to get out into the public more effectively, right? When everybody knows if your clothes are on fire, stop, drop, and roll. It doesn't mean cease running, fall on the ground, and roll around. It's stop, drop, and roll. And the reason that everybody knows that is because for half a century or more, everyone has taught and repeated it exactly the same way. So there's my soapbox. So we've had the cold shock response, cold incapacitation, and hypothermia. So if you get in cold water and you stay in the water, you will get to all three of these phases in this order. We have a fourth phase called rescue collapse, which is something that can happen just before, during, or after rescue. And this is what happened with one of the people in the rowing boat that we published with John Hayward. And it's a tragic scenario because you've got people who are conscious, looking at you, holding on, doing something, and then just as the rescue boat arrives, they sink and drown. And so it doesn't happen all the time, but we're going to see some examples as we move along and talk about it. So I was doing some helping the state of Alaska, advising them how to make a cold water boating safety video. And this is one of the videos we made. This water is 10 degrees. It says 8. It's 8 or 10. I can't remember exactly, but no more than 10. No less than 8. And this is Megan, who works for the state. So whether how much of a volunteer she is another story. Anyway, we wanted to make, in this video, we wanted to make realistic demonstrations. So she's just wearing one layer, light clothing. We told her jump in and swim along the shoreline, and we're going to take a video, and we had safety divers and everything so that when she started to look like she was failing, we wanted to take a video of cold incapacitation. So just listen to her, and I will tell you that the video is shortened, but when she gets to shore, just know that she's been in the water for 2.5 minutes. So I want you to be thinking about what stage is going on, what's happening, what are you observing here, because this is all very, very, this is like the best educational video I have, so you got to appreciate it. Here we go. Go.
Rolling, go.
That was pretty dramatic right there.
Honestly, I can't move anything.
So that's a pretty interesting picture right there. She's in like less than 6 inches of water, 3 feet from shore, and she can't get anywhere. So we usually ask, what do you think? What phase is this? And maybe we'll break the rules here. Feel free to for this one question, just unmute and just shout out an answer. What do you give me? 5 or 6 people give me a response here. What is the phase that we've just watched here?
Cold incapacitation.
Okay. Anybody, any other possibilities?
Rescue collapse, but I've seen this one before.
You're not supposed to answer if
I
you've
know.
seen it before. You cheated. Oh my goodness.
This is the whole
Yeah.
reason I recommended this one for CORA.
No. Okay, so Well, we will go back to this, but just remember what you were thinking before someone told you exactly what the right answer was. But it's very interesting, eh? Like she's 3 feet from shore and she can't move. So now we pulled her out of here, and you will see. So most of what we're talking about here relating to you is sort of what do you do if you end up in the water, but you're also with groups. So if some of your colleagues end up in the water, this should help you deal with them properly. And also, if you end up showing up on scene where somebody has had a problem, you might know a little bit better what to do. So just so you know, I'm going to tell you right now that the first two, the top two priorities for this gal right now is to be gentle and horizontal. Treat her gently and keep her horizontal until we know what's going on. Now you're going to see 3 big burly guys come down to pick her up. You don't hear me talking, but I'm telling them, take it easy, go slow, pick her up. Because if I hadn't, somebody would have grabbed her by the scruff of the neck and dragged her across those rocks, because it's a medical emergency and we've got to hurry, which is not the case. Anyway, here we go. So they brought her out and we introduced her. Very interesting things we can learn from her. Okay, here we go.
Dad, when I first jumped in, it was just insane. I couldn't control my breath. I couldn't do anything. And then all of a sudden I could breathe again. Like it was like I hit a threshold. And then I could breathe, and it helped if I closed my eyes because I could concentrate on just my breath. And I don't know, I just kept swimming and now I can't feel anything.
Okay, so you were swimming fairly decently right till you got to the beach here.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Once I could feel the bottom, it's just like my body gave up. That was it. I could have gone farther though, if I hadn't hit the rocks.
So how can you explain it? You could have swam farther, but when you got to safe ground, you just collapsed. Can you explain that, or how it felt, or?
Oh, all of a sudden, I stopped thinking about my breath, because that's really all I was thinking about, was my breath, breathing. But once I hit the rocks, I knew that I didn't have to, I wasn't concentrating on my breathing anymore. And then I couldn't feel the rest of my body. Like that's when I started thinking about my arms and my legs and my torso and how absolutely freezing it was.
Okay, so it felt cold. Anything else? Pain, numbness?
Very painful. Not really numb, just it felt like my whole body was on fire. Yeah.
Okay. And then
it still feels like it's on fire, actually.
And you couldn't get up?
No way. I couldn't move anything.
What were you saying there before they picked you up, because I was just coming over here? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. So you got up, you felt you collapsed, and you were felt like your whole body was on fire.
Yeah.
Anything else to add to that?
No, my brain's not working very well right now.
Okay, that's all right. And you look like you're starting to shiver.
Yeah.
You're just noticing that yourself? Describe what you feel like right now. Why do you feel different that you're starting to shiver, or is that just coming in?
Now it's less burning and more just really, really cold.
And you're shivering like crazy.
I'm cold.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
Do you think you can get up and walk?
Possibly. Can't really feel my feet.
Do you want to try?
So before we go any further, we tell people don't let people walk. You heard me say gentle and horizontal. But I know she's only been in the water for 2.5 minutes. She's not hypothermic. And I'm just trying to give a demonstration as to what kind of shape is she really in, given the fact that 3 minutes ago she said she could not move.
Sure.
Let's see if you can get up on your own. We'll just see how it goes.
Okay. Oh, my arms are really...
Here, let's take this off for now. And let's say you just swam up on the shore and you were Can you get up?
All my joints are really, really stiff. And I feel like I can't, I feel like I don't have any muscle control. I feel kind of silly.
That's okay.
Oh.
Can you walk?
Yeah, if I crack my head on the rocks.
No, we'll watch it, but just see so you can get a demonstration of.
It's really, like I have to concentrate on like trying to move my feet forward.
Someone help him back up.
Oh, it's really hard to move my legs.
So just walk over here. We're just going to see if you can make it over here, and if you feel that you're feeling faint or weak, just tell us.
Okay. Yeah, I can't imagine doing this in a real life situation. For being all by yourself.
Okay, just gonna want some help, or what you doing? All right. Very nice job. Really nice job. So you can see how well she started out pretty shaky, and now she's walking really well. And she walked over to a change place there and got changed, and she was normal the rest of the day. So what can we learn from this video? So first of all, she was initially immersed in 10-degree water. Rapid skin cooling caused the cold shock response, which is gasping and hyperventilation. And her swimming movements were really just to maintain airway out of the water, but she had very little forward motion. So she was just surviving. And then you saw as dramatic a stop as I've ever seen. She was hyperventilating, and within 2 breaths, she was down to normal. And so she clearly didn't panic. We didn't tell her what to do, by the way. She knew what was going on, but we didn't say, get your breathing under control, like we're telling you to do. We just wanted to see what happened, and it happened to be a great demo. So after her hyperventilation disappeared, and now her breathing was under control, her swimming movements became purposeful, and she was making good forward motion. In fact, she swam further than we expected her to. So we had everybody scrambling to keep the camera getting over there and everything else. And then she said, she hit rock bottom when she hit contact with the shore. She said, as soon as my feet hit the rocks, my body just gave up. And she said she could have swam further if she had, very key statement, I could have swum further if I didn't hit the rocks. And that is true. So it's not cold incapacitation. We thought it was at the time. So if that's what your vote was, don't feel bad. Because that is a gradual effect. As muscles and nerves gradually get colder, you gradually lose your ability to perform. And so unless something decreases the temperature, precipitously, the effect is going to be gradual, not sudden like that. In this case, this was a mild case of rescue collapse. So that's pretty hard to get these. Hope you appreciate this. So contact with the bottom. So, and then she said her body just gave up. So so again, remember, this happens just rescue collapse happens just prior, during, or after rescue or getting to safety. And so this was during getting to safety. And there are a few mechanisms for this, but one of them we watched here, and that is probably mental relaxation. So when we're under stress, we pump out catecholamines or adrenaline, epinephrine, all the same kind of thing, excitatory hormones. And this helps us do 2 things. One is it helps us maintain blood pressure, and when we've all got juice with some adrenaline, we can run faster, we're stronger, so our muscles can do things they normally don't do. And so as soon as you relax, we think this is one of the things that's pretty
the whole story makes sense. So it's highly likely this is the case. We just don't have good scientific evidence to back this up, but it makes sense. And this is that as soon as she hit her feet hit the rocks or the bottom of the lake river, she mentally relaxed. She decreased her output of adrenaline, and now adrenaline does two things. It helps you maintain blood pressure and makes you stronger. And so her blood pressure dropped, and she was weaker, and she fell down and could not get up. So there you have it. You will always, if you're in long enough, you will always have the cold shock response, cold incapacitation, and hypothermia. Hypothermia is a long ways away. Just survive that first minute by getting your breathing under control. And it's not guaranteed, but rescue collapse will happen often. But there was a study done to show where they knew what the cause of death was in a large group of cold water deaths. 56% of them happened with cold shock response or cold incapacitation. They dove in and never came up. They gasped while their head was underwater, or swim failure. A quarter died of hypothermia. So these people obviously either had PFDs on or they had a boat or something they could hold on to. And 17% died of rescue collapse. That's 1 in 6. So how much do you have to worry about rescue collapse? So, I didn't mention that the rescue collapse is a spectrum, anywhere from falling down, like you saw Megan do, to fainting, which you didn't see, to cardiac arrest. And so the severity, of course, will deal with how much was the cold insult in the first place. So if you're in the water for 2 minutes, you're not going to die of the cold shock response. So this, do you worry much about rescue collapse or not? If someone in your group, you witness it and they're in the water for 5 minutes or less, you need to take care of them, but you don't have to be so worried about them dying on you. But if you are responding somewhere and someone's been in the water for 20, 30, 40 minutes, you need to be thinking this person could be a rescue collapse patient. So, and again, now you get to treat them gently, keep them horizontal, and that will minimize the possibility. The other thing is to, regardless of whether someone's been in for a few minutes or longer, you don't want them to relax mentally. So this is not the time when you say, okay, just relax, I've got you, I'll take care of you. This is a case where you need to have some really positive talk and keep them excited and with you in the rescue. So you can say things like, okay, hang in there. We're going to work together. We're going to fight. We got to keep going. Don't give up. We're gonna get you out of this, and just work with me. That kind of stuff. So you keep, if they have adrenaline going, adrenaline is their friend. Don't do anything to decrease their adrenaline output. So, we're getting close to the top of the hour. This is, we talked a bit about this before everybody was let in from the waiting room, the 1-10-1 principle. So I had the opportunity to go on the Late Show with David Letterman. 20 years next month, February 19th, 2004. And I did a demonstration in right around the corner there. This is Broadway, and around the corner behind me there is 53rd Street, and there's a big tank full of ice water. And we're going to do a demonstration both of the responses, the cold, not hypothermia, but cold shock response and cold incapacitation, and then come in and show a self-rescue to get out of ice. It wasn't an ice shelf, but we put a plywood shelf across, and then go into the green room where we rewarmed me. And so I knew that I would only have very short periods of time to talk. He would probably be making jokes and interrupt me. So I thought, okay, I need to take all this information. How do I get this information across in a short period of time? And necessity is the mother of invention. So for this here is the introduction of the 1-10-1 principle. to 6 million viewers live, and it's being taught and taught to audiences for the last 20 years, and it's still going. So here we go. Here it is, the very first time the world heard of the 1-10-1 principle.
Right in here. All right, now, are you getting out now, doctor, or are you staying in?
Now, if you'd like me to, I'd be happy to.
Well, it's entirely up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. And I use the word comfortable and...
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I don't think I've been in here long enough.
Well, they've tossed him a rope.
Okay, I can't get out.
You can't get out, Paul.
But here's the big message to people out there. You've got 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour.
Right.
1 minute to get control of your breathing, 10 minutes of meaningful movement, and it's been about 14 now and I can't get out, but there's still another hour before you become unconscious due to hypothermia. So if you were in this situation and you couldn't get out anymore, the best thing is not to thrash around, because that'll just kill you faster. Put your arms on the ice, be still, and it'll sound silly, but if you're lucky, you'll freeze to the ice. And then if you become unconscious, you won't slip into the water and drown.
Right.
Because after you become unconscious, if you don't drown, you'll still be another hour before your heart would stop.
Wow. Now, has this ever happened to you, doctor?
No, it hasn't, but I know of a few people who've had either their arms frozen to the ice or even their beard frozen to the ice and lived. So anyway, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind if my colleague Jerry Bristow helped me get out of here. Is that okay?
Can I ask you one more?
Okay, so he's just asking about what am I wearing, and I was just wearing regular clothing. So now, you know, even after 13 minutes, my core temperature might have dropped half a degree by this point, nowhere near clinical hypothermia. And I did, they had to pull me out and then off. Actually, it took me, I had to stay another 4 minutes because he did the top 10 list while I was there, and then off to the warming room.
All right in here. All right in here.
Sorry.
All right, now.
Okay, so I think we'll kind of end with this here and see if we have any questions at the end of this. So this is related to, so the 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour, each relate to the 3 phases. So the 1 minute, get your breathing under control, relates to the cold shock response. 10 minutes of meaningful movement, that's cold incapacitation. And the idea there is to say you've got more than a minute to make things happen. So you do have time to look around, make a plan, and then you can get out, or at least try to execute the plan. And the 1 hour before you become unconscious due to hypothermia is just a reminder that hypothermia is a long ways off. Do not panic and worry about that. So here's a guy, this is in Ottawa. This is not him. It's a representative picture, but a Ottawa police officer, after I gave a talk one day, came and told me this. He said, "Hey, you saved my life." And so, of course, I want to hear that story. Time somebody says that. So he was out on a sunny spring day, him and his son, 12-year-old son. Of course, only his son was wearing a life jacket. And so it's a nice warm day, so not a lot of thick clothing on, but a valuable item fell overboard, and he dove in to retrieve it without thinking and not thinking about the fact that water was very, very cold. So when he surfaced, he said he was facing the boat, he was frozen in space, his mouth was open, he couldn't breathe or move, and the 2 things went through his mind at that point. And he said the first one was, am I really going to drown in front of my son? And then he said he remembered hearing my voice, because obviously he'd heard this before. Don't panic, just get your breathing under control. So he forced himself to take some slow, deep breaths. And then he got his breathing under control. He was able to swim. He got back to the boat and everything was fine. So here's a guy who never practiced it, but he remembered. So he had done preparation, the first P. The second P, the prevention didn't work so well, but then he performed. He remembered what to do and he did it. So there's your 3 Ps in action. I don't think we're going to go through this here. So what time is it? It is 7:01. Let me just
I think we can go longer if you like.
yeah, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to talk about rescue and extraction. I think you all know, if you're doing this sport, you know the different types of clothing provide more insulation, and the more insulation, the better. And so I'm going to go here, and here we go. So talk about rescue and extraction. Sea kayaking, outrigger paddling, you're probably not dealing with being stuck in rocks and rapid water rescue. But so we won't talk too much about the actually extracting someone. But what do you do with them? What do you do with a cold patient? So the major principle here is slow down and think. And this is relevant to you as a victim. Remember, don't panic, get your breathing under control, slow things down, figure out what's the best place I can go or to keep myself from drowning. And as a responder, it's important as well. So I really like this Far Side cartoon, which says, I told you guys to slow down and take it easy, or something like this would happen. Everybody was rushing, and next thing you know, old buddy's flying through the air. So when you're dealing with a victim, I told you already that the first two principles, gentle handling and get them in a horizontal position. I'm not gonna, horizontal position. So if this person, so this is at a U.S. Coast Guard base in Sitka. They're demonstrating their single sling rescue. Now you can imagine, if you're in the water up to your neck before they hoist you out, the deeper you go, the more hydrostatic pressure is. The deeper the water, the more pressure against your legs, and that's forcing blood up into your torso. And you can imagine, as soon as you pull the person vertically out of the water, now you don't have that pressure around the legs, so blood tends to go down into the legs, and that's going to decrease your blood pressure. And if you're really cold, your blood pressure maintenance mechanisms aren't all working as well. And so you can, so you had a decrease in temperature. We've already said that you might have mental relaxation and a decrease in adrenaline. That's decreasing your blood pressure. And as more blood doesn't go down here and stay here, it's always flowing, but there's a greater blood flow to the legs. And you can imagine with these cold legs, blood goes down, cools off, and comes back, and the heart gets even colder. So you've got a cold heart that's working harder to maintain blood pressure, and it's getting colder. And these are all things that can put you into rescue collapse on the far end of the spectrum, where your heart actually stops. So you want to be horizontal. How do you make someone horizontal when you're hoisting them out somewhere? The U.S. Coast Guard now has a second sling that they'll put under here. So that's not perfectly horizontal, but that is a lot better than this. So anything you can do to keep someone horizontal is advantageous and recommended. Of course, you want to remove them and protect them from the cold environment. You want to get them out of the water. And that might sound silly, but just 2 weeks ago, I got an email from someone at a fire department, not to be disclosed, in Canada, where the chief was, or the chief instructor was telling people, if the air temperature is colder than the water, leave the people in the water. And that's garbage. Water conducts heat away from the body 25 times faster than air at the same temperature. So it's never advantageous to stay in the water. So you got to get out of the water. Then, of course, when you get out of the water, try and protect them as much as you can, and then dry, insulate, and wrap them in a vapor barrier. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. So I just want to show you this model I've made here. So this is the torso. And this is the legs, and you're warm and lots of blood flow everywhere and everything's great. When you get cold, you decrease blood flow, you vasoconstrict, decrease blood flow to the legs, so they get colder. The body gets colder, but the legs get even colder. And if you do anything to increase blood flow to the legs, like the exercise, or you allow them to stand up, or you hoist them out vertically, Now that extra blood flow comes down to colder limbs and comes back and cools the heart even colder. So anything that increases blood flow to the cold limbs will increase what's called the afterdrop. So we talked about the fact that you've got three things working against you now. You've got a decrease in adrenaline, you've got a decrease in blood pressure, and you've got an afterdrop, which, by the way, with Megan, remember when she was shivering after a few minutes and felt really, really cold? That's because her heart temperature, even though it probably hadn't gone down when she got to shore, as she was sitting there, more blood was going out to colder tissue, and her heart and brain were indeed cooling off. So she had an afterdrop right while you were watching her on video. So I think last thing about rescue collapse, here is a guy, this is not water related, but it's the same principle. He was caught in this avalanche. He was extricated after 2 hours. He was breathing, conscious, and able to move. This is a guy who was alive and should stay alive. Unfortunately, however, they dug the hole a bit more. He got the snow brushed off him. He stood up despite the fact that rescuers told him not to. After standing for 1 or 2 minutes, he lost consciousness and died. And his post-mortem showed that there was no internal trauma. His death was due to hypothermia caused by rescue collapse. So you've seen it with Megan, you've seen it with this. Just recognize that when you're taking somebody out of the cold, be as gentle as you can, keep them horizontal if you can. You don't need to be quite so religious about it if they've been in the water for 2 minutes. But 15, 20 minutes or longer, you really, really need to be careful. And I think, I don't think I sent you this, but I will email you this cold card. We've published this, which is a real short summary of everything from a much larger document, which is the guidelines for hypothermia prevention and care from the Wilderness Medical Society. And all of the authors on that have signed off on this card. And so you'll get, I'll send a PDF to your organizers and you can distribute it. Just print it off, laminate it, stick it in your pack, and have it with you. It shows you how to tell approximately how cold somebody is by and basically you just read the instructions. Start at the top, from the outside ring to center. Assess consciousness, movement, shivering, and alertness, and assess whether it's normal, go green, or impaired or no function, go red. And then you can figure out which quadrant they're in, whether they're cold stressed, not hypothermic, from 37 down to 35, or mildly hypothermic, below 35, moderately hypothermic, below 32, and severe, if you remember back there, it was 28. Doesn't really matter what the temperatures are because nobody can measure them. But if someone is cold and unconscious, assume they're severely hypothermic. And you can see in each quadrant there's advice as to what to do. And a common thing is gentle, horizontal, insulate with a vapor barrier, apply heat to the upper trunk if you have any. You can provide a high-calorie food or drink to a mildly hypothermic person who's alert and not going to choke. And and then the other side. Okay, what are we doing here? I think, well, I'll play this video and then I'll show you one more slide and then we'll be done. Okay, so this is this is from one of our videos we made for Cold Water Boot Camp. And it's about how to diagnose how cold somebody is.
This triage procedure should occur in conjunction with normal first responder checks for ABCs, spinal, and other secondary injuries. This repackaging procedure should only be attempted in a protected environment and normally would occur if transport to hospital would last longer than about 30 minutes. And they've actually carried him a long way from the water, keeping him horizontal, gently placing him down. And again, we're in a sheltered area, so we're going to get him out of his wet clothing and prepare him to be put on the stretcher. And if there's ever any problem, you just take your time to get it right.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now we have our Coast Guard rescue specialist will come in, and they're going to cut off his clothing, and we're going to find out how he's doing. How are you?
Good.
So this person is fairly wide awake. He's been in the water for quite a while, and he is shivering, so he is mildly hypothermic. We still want to cut his clothing off. Well, here we have our rescue team is bringing him in. They're being very careful to be gentle, and they're keeping him horizontal, and they put him down very gently, and that's very good. So then we just need to take him out of his sleeping bag, and our paramedics will come in. And of course, we want to open up his sleeping bag, get the plastic off, and the first thing that they'll be wanting to do is they're wanting to find out what level of hypothermia he is. We know from the history in this case that his only problem has been cold stress, and I'm just going to do that right now. How you doing? Do you know what your name is? Hello, are you conscious? Hey, okay, so we can see that he can make noises, but he's not very coherent. He's not shivering, but just barely conscious, so he's moderately hypothermic. So when a victim is this cold, we want to make sure to be as gentle as possible, so we're going to cut off his clothing, including his PFD. So our rescue team is bringing this victim in on a backboard, and again, they've been very careful to keep him horizontal. They're gently putting him down. And then, because he is wet, he's just come out of the water, they're going to, and this is a sheltered area, they're going to open it up, and our paramedics will move in and cut off his clothing and get him ready to put on the stretcher to be put in the ambulance.
Okay, so you can see that he was in a sleeping bag, and this vapor barrier or piece of plastic was inside the sleeping bag because he's been taken out of the water, he's soaking wet. So a vapor barrier does three things. First of all, because it's a vapor barrier, it eliminates evaporative heat loss, and it also will cut down on convective heat loss. If he was out in the wind and you just wrapped him in that plastic, he'd be very happy. But the other thing that a vapor barrier can do is protect and keep your insulation dry. If you just put him in that sleeping bag, it would become soaked, and then it would be basically useless. So here's the last slide. So the back side of that cold card, which you'll all get, it says copyright on here, but don't worry about it. Just you can feel free to copy it and give it away as much as you want. And I'm astounded by the fact that this is 8 years old already. But anyway, here we go. So basically, this is a list of things to get, and it's listed in the order that you would put it down on the ground to try and make it as idiot-proof as possible. And so you would put a tarp or piece of plastic, 8 by 8, 10 by 10 is a good size, on the ground, then a sleeping pad, then a sleeping bag or a blanket, then that inside vapor barrier piece of plastic, or a couple of pieces of, a couple of foil blankets, crossways so you can wrap them up. And if you have you probably none of you will have one, but it's a good thing to have around, is a chemical heating blanket. If you do have any kind of heat, you apply it to the chest and the armpits, wrap them up, and that is your hypothermia wrap, or otherwise known as the burrito. I'm going to leave it at that. So there's just some examples of you can get, I don't make any money from this, any of these companies, but when I went to Ukraine a couple times, 3 times in 2023, and I took medical equipment to give to the soldiers, I bought the Ready Heat 2 chemical blanket, and there it is. There's a big blanket, and this is a pad, just a pad. And yeah, so I think that's that's pretty much all we have there, and we'll end with that. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing, and thank you for the invitation, and end with my usual advice, which is to keep cool but don't freeze.
Great, thanks very much, Dr. Giesbrecht. Well, actually, in terms of say a 6-person outrigger canoe, relating to the steps that you outlined, like when an outrigger canoe flips over, typically the crew will have to right the canoe. So there's an established process for that. That takes a couple of minutes. A quick crew will be able to get it over within about within a minute or two. A slower crew might take, say, up to 5 minutes or so to flip it back over. So that's something that will, in theory, they'll need to get their breathing under control in or stop hyperventilating before being able to get their mind straight. One, because typically people will forget what to do because of the shock of the circumstances. And then I guess they'll be active for a little bit, getting the canoe over. And then once the canoe is over, I suppose there might be an opportunity for rescue collapse because they've got that task finished, but then they've got to climb into the canoe. And typically the weight of a person's clothing will weigh them down a lot. And depending on what type of clothing they're wearing, if you're wearing, say, pants with an elasticized ankle cuff, that might fill up with water and that creates problems. But people have to haul themselves into the canoe. And even on a good sunny, warm, hot day, some people have trouble hauling themselves into the canoe the best of times. So you've got sort of the need for physical coordination and strength at that point. And then once they get into the canoe, they have to bail out the water from the canoe. So there's and then after that, they've got to paddle back to their home base. In theory, depending on, I suppose, if a rescue craft has come along, if they happen to be somewhere nearby where one's available. So your comment that you should stay horizontal and exercise is something that, in the context of an outrigger canoe rescue might be difficult because there's a number of tasks that need to be performed.
Yep. Okay. So we have no rescue scenario in what you've just shown. You're doing a survival scenario.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what we're talking about is if a boat shows up and you pull people into the boat, you don't want them walking around.
Right. Okay.
No, but if you're in this group and you dump your boat, the 1-10-1 principle applies. So somebody has to remember. Okay, everybody just relax. So it's important if I don't have to get in this boat in the next 2 minutes.
Okay.
I'm not going to die of hypothermia. So I can take I can take 1 minute and do nothing but get my breathing under control. That is not going to get me any closer to become hypothermic. In fact, if I did nothing for a minute, I probably have a better chance of surviving than if all 8 or 9 or however many of us just keep doing stuff. Because if you start right away, people are not controlling their breathing, they're not controlling their thinking, and it's very hard to coordinate a bunch of people in that state, as opposed to if everybody just gets your just hang on, everybody, just take some deep breaths, everyone. Okay, now let's listen, let's plan this out, let's do what we have trained to do. And of course, when it comes to training, I'm a big advocate of realistic training. So it's one thing to train in warm water, but it'd be very valuable for people to do it, try it in close to shore, in 10, 12 degree water, and just see what it's like. It'll be a lot more difficult. And then of course, there's no spot in that scenario that you gave where you're going to have cold shock response. Rescue collapse.
Collapse. Okay.
You get in, you're trying to turn the boat over, you're trying to get in, you're bailing water out, you're paddling to shore. You are amped up the whole time. So that's not an issue. So you've got the 1-10-1 principle is for when you are the victim or the patient.
Right.
And the whole gentle horizontal is if you are rescuing somebody and you get them out of their predicament. Don't conflate the two. Like you're not going to say, "Oh, I'm not going to get in the boat because I'd have to be vertical for a little period of time and I'm supposed to stay horizontal." No, the thing is that understanding the 1-10 principle will allow you to be able to go through that self-rescue scenario much more effectively.
Okay. That makes sense because at False Creek's Race Development Program a number of years ago, before COVID, I think, we did have a canoe huli capsize in December, and the people that that went through that, were able to paddle back to shore, but they just felt really cold afterwards, like sort of a really deep-seated cold
Yep,
that was
that's
hard to shake even after going home, changing into dry clothes and getting a hot shower, that sort of
so
thing.
that's your after drop. That's
Yeah.
what Megan described that. She didn't talk about deep cold, but she says it's really, really cold.
Okay.
And so again, when I started, you remember me talking about the cold water swimmers, that you really have to be careful once you get out of the water, because now you're setting yourself up for you're at risk of another set of problems, which is all the post rescue issues.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah, that's
those people who felt cold the rest of the day, they were probably close to, yeah, close to rescue collapse. Feeling cold is after drop for sure.
mhm.
We don't call that rescue collapse, but if you fall down, then we'll call that collapse. And so they were probably close, but yeah, so that's a good example, and
Okay.
their descriptions of how they felt is very appropriate and should be educational for folks. Once you get out, you're not out of the water yet. You're
Mhm.
still, when you get out of the water, you're not out of the water yet, because
Okay.
you still got lots of issues that can happen.
So we've got, so like, for example, at False Creek compound, we've got Mylar blankets as in our emergency kit. Would you recommend anything
Those
else?
are an expensive piece of plastic. They
Yeah.
have no insulation value. I would have, so these kits are in the boat or on shore?
Those are on shore. Yeah.
Yeah. So on shore, you should have a duffel bag or something that's got two pieces of plastic, 10 by 10, a sleeping bag, a sleeping
Mhm.
pad,
Right.
and here, hang on.
Basically for the burrito.
Yeah, wrapping some, every movie, no matter what the stress is, you see after when they cut when the ambulance is there, everybody's got the Mylar blankets on. And
Yeah,
you
for
just
sure.
ask, what good is that doing? The answer, nothing. So
Okay.
Mylar, the idea with the space blanket or the foil blanket is it's supposed to reflect heat back to the body.
But if there's no heat
If
to
you're
reflect.
warm, that's great.
Yeah.
If you wrap yourself up in one right now, you'll feel warm. But if you're freezing, you cannot melt ice with a Mylar blanket.
Right.
So I used to tell people, don't bother buying those, but I've given up on that because they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. But just understand that if all you have in your rescue kit is a Mylar blanket, you need to think again. So here is, and again, I don't make any money from these people. This is a dry chemical heating blanket. It's small and thin. I don't know, they're $30-$40 a piece. I think they come in packages of 6. You would do well to buy one of those, stick them in,
Okay.
and just have 1 or 2 in your survival suit. But even without that, right? Two pieces of plastic, a sleeping bag, a hooded sleeping bag if you can get one. You should throw a toque in there, and sleeping pad. And when I email you the PDF for the cold card, you can just follow the instructions, and that's good. But
Mhm.
please don't think that having a Mylar blanket
Yeah.
is the only thing you need in a rescue kit.
Okay.
So
Well,
Ron, I want to
good to hear.
thank you for asking that question, because I think that will result, thanks to Gordon, in better club side response kits across the board. Because and I'll use that as a segue to say that tomorrow this will be available as a recording, so that you in your clubs across the country can share this conversation with your club members and paddlers and so on. And club operators, we will share Gordon's kit along with some advice about how to make your shoreside kit more useful in response to cold water immersion and subsequent complications. So Gordon, we're at our 90-minute mark, and I want to, on behalf of CORA, thank you on behalf of the board and Ron for a fantastic presentation. And this will be enjoyed by the 50-odd people that are here at today's meeting and by many dozens more over the coming days. So it was time well spent by you. And hopefully we see you again in warmer weather.
We're offering the
thanks very
cold water
much.
workshop. I don't know if you know this or not, but we're offering the cold water workshop in Vancouver and Victoria in September.
Well, that's excellent. If you can
We're
share
coming to
that
you.
with us, if we can share that with us, we'll certainly
I'll send you Ian
on.
Gilson's, when I send you the cold card, I'll send you Ian Gilson's email, and he is the guy that organizes this.
Awesome. Well, thank
we
you.
can
Thank
definitely
you,
publicize that.
Ron and Gordon and all of our audience. That concludes our first 2024 town hall. You can expect a link broadcast for the recording so that you can share it with people that you care about. And with all that said, have a good evening, everyone. Stay warm, and we'll see you again at the next town hall. Bye,
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.